She made education her biggest focus and priority, female entrepreneurship, young people, and in her incredibly important speech at the Abu Dhabi Media Summit, which I highly recommend. In fact, we are going to post it in its entirety on WorldPost tomorrow, because it was the kind of speech that really defined a new narrative for the Arab world. And I think this is such a great, great service that you are providing, not just to the Arab world, but to all of us, that when ISIS was negotiating with Jordan for the release of the pilot, whom they subsequently brutally burned to death, one of the conditions in the release was that the Queen would stop using social media and her speeches to put forward this narrative. So it shows that ISIS understands the power of what you're doing. And you're truly an inspiration to millions of people, including your 3.6 million followers on Twitter. So the big emphasis of our conference here has been on the need for media to focus on what is working, not just focus relentlessly on the crisis, the beheadings, the problems that we are facing, although obviously it is our responsibility to cover all this and give our readers a full picture. But it seems that we, especially when it comes to the Arab world, we are not giving the full picture. We obviously legitimately talk about the dangers of the high youth unemployment in the Arab world. But what is actually happening in youth unemployment, in work, in any area that you consider hopeful, that you consider part of the narrative of what is working?
Well, you know, it's no secret that I come from a part of the world that is not exactly Switzerland. We do face many, many challenges, and I think especially in the last 5-6 years with all the political upheaval and the rise of groups like ISIS and others, the challenges have really gotten quite substantial. But just a few figures, 60% of the Arab world is under the age of 25. At the same time, we have one of the highest unemployment rates. It's about 25%. So I think it wasn't a surprise that in a recent survey, about 79% of millennials cited finding a job as their #1 challenge. But the good news is that many of them are trying to do something about it through technology. I know that everyone in this room has heard about the Arab Spring, but I think most people haven't heard or not aware that there is a startup spring happening in the Arab world. There is a young generation, a population that is coming of age, that is tech savvy at a time when the digital landscape in the Arab world is changing. So a few statistics. We have 135 million internet users, which is growing at the highest rate in the world. E-commerce is still quite limited, but growing again at the fastest rate in the world. Mobile penetration is at about 110%. And the ICT landscape is growing again. It has one of the highest growth potential rates. So all these are not just indicators of the economy, but they're actually, I find that they're indicators of hope. Because in many instances, technology is being used to level the playing field. So for example, in the Arab world, 35% of online entrepreneurs are females. And that's compared to a global average of only 10%. So I think technology is changing the opportunity landscape for many of our young people and really helping in tackling one of the toughest challenges, which is unemployment. I think it can contribute to that, it can contribute to our GDP. And I'm quite proud that Jordan actually has one of the most evolved startup ecosystem in the Middle East. A few years ago, Amman was rated as the 10th best city for a tech startup. But having said all that, the region still has a lot of challenges in terms of we have an education system that doesn't churn out enough entrepreneurs. There's still quite a bit of red tape, not enough investment in this field. But just like extremists can inspire young people with their religious rhetoric, I think successful Arab entrepreneurs can also capture the imagination of youth and really help change the discourse in our region. So I think we really need to back them up with more finance and faith and really give technology the opportunity to change things in the Arab world.
And to that effect, I love what you recently said, that for the future of our young people, we must create a new narrative and broadcast it to the world. Because if we don't decide what our identity is, the extremists will do it for us. And so, as well as using social media extremely effectively, what you are doing, and bringing more capital and financing into the Arab world to help take these startups to the next level, what else do you think those of us in the West can be doing to support the movement that's already happening around entrepreneurship, startups, education, and all the other things that you're involved in?
Well, I'll give you an example. For example, access to quality education is one of the toughest challenges. And there are lots of online efforts in the Arab world underway. My personal experience, my foundation last spring launched a massive open online course, which a MOOC in Arabic, in cooperation with edX, which is, as you know, is a MIT Harvard consortium. So we're working with the best Arab professionals and professors, and not just in the Arab world, but Arab professors also abroad, to really develop original Arab content. But at the same time, we're also translating courses from universities like Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, etc., and providing these courses in Arabic for free. We started off with 10 courses, and we had around 85, within weeks, we had 85,000 subscribers. And then now, 9 months later, we have 20 courses and upwards of 140,000 subscribers. So you can see that there's a real thirst to have access to this kind of information. And we're focusing our content on education for employment. So we have a good mix of practical as well as academic courses. Things like teacher training, introduction to computer science, how to write a CV, the most effective job search strategies. And we're working with the private sector to really try to understand what the learning gaps are in the market and to address some of the skills gap as well. So it's actually been, the reception has been so incredible and compelling, because it's really a lifeline for a lot of these youth. For example, we have people in Syria who have subscribed because, and I've received personal messages from young people who say that, you know, we can't attend university because of the security situation in our country, and we haven't been able to do it for a couple of years. And having these access to these courses has really given us a chance at normality in our lives. And you know, being able to acquire skills, because it's ironic, I was saying that we have one of the highest unemployment rates, but we also have a lot of employers who say they have vacancies, but they can't find the right people. So there's a mismatch between what our educational systems are producing and the skills that the market needs. So courses like these can really help fill that gap and give people a leg up in their future.
And given that you have this incredible response to these courses, what I would love to do is, as we are launching HuffPost Arabic in the summer, we would love to invite all the tens of thousands of students to tell their stories.
Absolutely, and you know, I mean, I just saw Zaha Hadid and other wonderful Arab high achievers, and them producing their content and providing it for our young people. Our young people will get the benefit of that kind of exposure and the inspiration of seeing people from their part of the world having achieved so much. You know, like I said, we don't want our young people just to be inspired by crazy people with guns, you know, claiming that they're going to take them to heaven if they do this and that. We want them to be inspired by people who've really achieved something and made a difference, a positive difference in the world. So the West, if you were asking how can you help, by helping us with that content. And like I said, with the tech startup spring, by helping us with your expertise, those kinds of exchanges are very, very beneficial. Investments, there's great opportunity to actually get a high return on your investment by supporting some of these young, very creative talents that we have in the Arab world.
And also by opening up all the platforms here to hear their stories, to hear the young people's stories, because at the moment we're inundated with one kind of narrative.
Exactly.
So it's both the narratives that are affecting how the Arab youth sees the world, but also the narratives that are affecting how the West sees the Arab world.
Yes, there is unfortunately, it's always the case that the more dramatic and extreme and loud the voices are, the more people listen to it, and the good stories, unfortunately, don't get heard. But in order to change the tide in the Arab world, we really have to realize that, see, what the extremists want is to divide our world along fault lines of religion and culture. And so a lot of people in the West, may have stereotypes against Arabs and Muslims. But really what this fight is a fight between the civilized world and a bunch of crazy people who really want to take us back to medieval times. So, and we need to see it that way. And once we see it that way, then we realize that, this is about all of us coming together to defend our way of life.
And that's why whenever there is such an incredible manifestation of that common humanity, as happened, for example, on February 21st, when 1,000 Muslims surrounded a synagogue in Oslo, and then hundreds of other Norwegians surrounded another synagogue last Saturday in solidarity. It would be great, and there are many people in the media here, so all of us in the media have a responsibility to put these stories on the front pages, at the top of our sites, instead of treating them as afterthoughts and running this continuous reel of the beheadings, which simply, really, don't you think, reinforces what the extremists want us to do?
It is what they want to achieve at the end of the day. They are very adept at choosing social media to the internet is probably one of the best inventions at promoting ideas that ever existed. But unfortunately, it doesn't separate or distinguish between the good, bad, and the ugly. And these guys, although in their bigotry and their brutality, they may come across as medieval, but in their use of social media, they're very much up to speed. So they are using social media to really build and broadcast their own global brand of true violence and terror. And in the process, they're implicating Muslims and Islam. And I find it very ironic because they're using the very same technologies that were designed for a very connected world to create a very polarized world by making fear and intolerance go viral and making people have these negative perceptions of who we are. So it is absolutely critical that we try to turn the online tide against them by generating our own content and our own narrative to counter theirs. So we really need to tap into the creative and innovative and technological talents, especially of our youth, to come up with content that really sort of challenges what their story is.
And yes, I agree. And of course, specifically, your own country has responded with such incredible courage and ferocity to what is happening. And you've actually talked about how Jordan is facing crisis and tragedy with patience, faith, and determination. But give us an update on what's actually happening in Jordan.
Well, I think from the very beginning, we did realize that this is our fight. That we can't let them hijack our identity and brand us in a way that they want. That this is something that we have to write our own narrative. And I think what happened with our pilot was horrific, and I think for many Jordanians, the scare tactics that these terrorists were using backfired against them because it just angered Jordanians and it made them, instead of making them scared, it just made them want to fight ISIS. And my husband said in a recent interview that we in Jordan are used to being outnumbered and outgunned, and we usually punch above our weight. And I think what happened is Jordanians really rallied around the flag and realized that this is something that it is our fight. And you know, people call them ISIS, and I would love to drop the first I in that ISIS because there's nothing Islamic about them. They have nothing to do with faith and everything to do with fanaticism. And I think as an international community, we would do well to not focus on the religious character of that group, because when we do, we give them undeserved legitimacy. It doesn't matter what they call themselves. It matters what we call them. And they want to be called Islamic, first of all, because, like I said, it gives them legitimacy, and it also helps with the recruitment. And also because it means that any action taken against them would automatically be called a war against Islam, which is exactly what they want it to be. They want it to be, like I said, the West coming against Islam. And because that will help them with their recruiting. And they want to see that clash of civilizations that people talk about. And, you know, whether the clash of civilizations remains a concept or a reality is very much dependent on how we decide to do things. You know, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if people start to say, we want to fight Islam, and then the Muslims start to feel like they're targeted, so these guys can recruit even more, and then it happens. So we're very committed, and we're sparing no resources in fighting this group, and we realize that this is a war that has to be led by Muslims and Arabs, because we never want to see this branded as a war against Islam, and we're very much committed to defending our identity.
And are you surprised that their message is even appealing to women, young women who are being recruited?
You know, it surprises me that anybody could, their message could appeal to anyone. And a lot of times people ask that question, you know, why do people get inspired by these groups? And I don't think there's one single answer. There isn't a single story that can help us understand that. I think some are attracted to their message because they want a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of fulfillment. Some want adventure, some fall for the religious rhetoric. I actually see it in my mind as a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid are those who actually generate that ideology. And I think they're the worst. Fanaticism and extremism exists in every religion, but it always remains on the fringes. And I think what makes it drift to the mainstream is the fact that they were supported. There's, you know, some did support them with money, and they provided them with the infrastructure, which allowed them to then spread that ideology a lot more. In the middle of the pyramid, I think, are those who, whether in reality or they perceive that there is a political injustice, that they don't have a stake in their own societies, and that there's no justice. And I think at the bottom of the pyramid are those who are probably uneducated, suffer from poverty, unemployment, and they are the most vulnerable. But apart from the ones at the top, it's vulnerability that makes people fall prey to their kind of rhetoric. And that's why we need to fight these people at different levels. There's a military battle which absolutely has to take place, because at the end of the day, they are controlling vast amounts of territory, the size of the UK, and they are terrorizing innocent people that really need us to come to their defense. But this is not just a military battle. It cannot be just one on the battlefield. I think at the heart of this war is an ideology. And you cannot kill an ideology with a bullet. You can only kill it with a better idea. And that's why we, you know, as I said, we need to create that content online to fight them, but also understanding that it's not just online, because social media has helped with the speed and the scale of recruitment, but it's not driving it. You know, it's helping them connect to minds young and impressionable minds that are already receptive to that message. But we need to understand what are those vulnerabilities and address the root causes of these vulnerabilities. And it's different in different areas. I know in my part of the world, a big part of it is about providing jobs, a sense of justice, opportunity, and participation. So they feel that they really have stake in their own future. So we have to fight this battle at many different levels. And like I said, it is our war, but we cannot win it alone. We do need the support of every country in the world, because it is, it is a war between, like I said, humanity, the civilized world, and people who really who have no respect for human life.
Well, your own passion and your own deep commitment to winning this war with human means, but also with using all modern technology at our disposal is really inspiring. And I know, speaking for myself and for everyone here, we are deeply grateful that you are where you are and that you are traveling, even though you and I have talked how hard it is to be away from your children, yes. Because you believe so passionately that you have a big role to play here in communicating this message out to the world. And certainly, from our point of view, at the WorldPost and the Huffington Post, we are completely committed to carrying this message forward. And let's drop the I from ISIS. Thank you so much, Your Majesty.